like I feel like I'm missing out right now, but you're giving us everything that we need to have this conversation. I'm super excited to chat with you today. I do want to remind the audience, I know that we have folks in and out there in the brand innovators world. Welcome. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm Tiffanie. I lead Director of Strategic Partnerships at Influential, social data company specializing in showcasing the effectiveness of influencer marketing by measuring things like foot traffic, tune in, all of that fun stuff. And we're here with Jaclyn, who has a mouthful title of all of the buzzwords that I love. She is the Managing Director, Cultural Impact and Brand Communications at the Martin Agency.
That's
And
right.
I'd love to hear more about that department because it is fairly new, and you've grown it to be a mix of a lot of different folks who have their own specialties in their own right. And I won't talk more about it. Let us know more about that and what you guys are doing with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. So the Cultural Impact Lab at the Martin Agency was started from the ground up. So I founded it just about 2 years ago this week. Actually, we launched out into the market, and so the idea was we wanted to create an entity inside the agency that allowed us to engineer influence. We're here to talk about influence today. It allowed us to engineer the idea of how can we make the work that we are so diligently creating at the agency be more talkable, be more buzzworthy, splash the headlines, take over the social feeds. And so that was really kind of the essence of the idea of creating the lab. And so what we've done from a discipline perspective is we've looked at like what are all the facets of amplification. And so we have hired and built the team on the backs of earned media specialists. So we've taken people from the journalism world to brand marketers to tried and true PR agency experts. We've coupled that with paid media specialists. So because we know sometimes you got to press the gas pedal down, right, to get stuff out into the world. And then this year, excitingly, we've added a really robust layer of implementing a social studio. And so really thinking, from the organic to the paid to community management to cultural creative for the feeds, what does that look like? And so we've really kind of invested the past, I'd say, 6 to 12 months, just looking at how we can integrate that more fluidly across, because we do have more of our clients and brand partners asking us to kind of stretch across the digital ecosystem and think about where are all the places that we can put that impact.
I love to hear that because, as this space evolves, it's definitely not just one note. Thinking about influencers, thinking about social, but really thinking about marketing as a whole. How are people reaching their customers? Because their customers aren't in and of itself just one size fits all sort of demographic or psychographic, wherever they might be. So you guys have a lot of legs, I want to say, in a different spaces, which I think is really smart. You did mention creative studio. I'd love to hear more about that. It does make me think about the year that we've come off of and how things might
Yeah.
have changed and bringing things in house and getting more creative in general, taking things into your own hands with team members. Tell us a little bit about some of those differences in your efforts across your team with your clients this year versus last year.
Yeah, well, the Martin Agency is a creative agency at the core. And so we are fortunate that we have such a creative powerhouse of folks that we can tap into at any given time to help us, figure out what that impact looks like by way of assets. I think what's unique about what we do is we hook into the process from the beginning. So I think, a lot of people may relate to instances where you feel like you've bolted on the impact layer to the end of the idea. And the truth is like we engineer it from the front end. So we don't let decisions get made that create any sort of like missteps in the amplification or in the creative process, right? Because we know sometimes that we might need to land something in the social feeds that will propel a conversation forward. before a larger creative moment happens, before an activation takes off, before maybe a TV spot is even launching. And, I think a lot about, like, it feels so long ago since that we've been able to sit down with people in person, but I think, and this was actually probably 7 or 8 years ago. Honestly, it might have even been longer than that. But I was sitting with some of the editorial staff in the Huffington Post, and they talked about, at the time, which I think is now everyone's going to nod their heads and be like, yes, we know, social being the new front door. And I often think about when the plane had to land on the Hudson in New York, like that news started permeating by way of Twitter. Like that's what people are. And so I think very often when we think about, how we're going to create impact and where we're going to drive the influence, like it isn't always the traditional channels. And so we also are embracing that mentality with speed. I think we've talked a lot about this in our agency. I think the pandemic forced all of us to get faster, and I don't know that we're going to slow down if people trickle back into the office. I think like speed is the new way in these days. It's certainly a mantra we've been embracing, but I think something that we were able to do amidst the pandemic going on is we were able to prop up a brand new production hub inside our walls. It's called Superjoy. It's amazing, but it allows us to create more content at speed. I think the power of influencers quite often for brands is you can enlist someone that can create that content at speed. You could brief them this morning and something's out a couple hours later because they are tracking with the speed at which people are scrolling through the feeds. And we all know what that looks like at any given day. And so I think, that's really what we're embracing on the creative content side of things. It's just honestly trying to keep up.
I mean, pivot was like the word of the year, being more flexible, faster, just like adaptable, like bigger, stronger, better.
I love you said adaptable. We did words of the year with my team. Everyone picked a word that was going to be their mantra for the year, and mine was adaptability. Coming out of 2020, if you didn't learn, or if you didn't have adaptability prior in your skill set, hopefully it's ingrained now, but I don't want to lose that either, right? Like we learned how to face adversity head on and be more nimble and be more adaptable. So I think that was something I wanted to bottle up and take with us this year.
I always think about that same sort of mindset, how we've been adaptable this year to like when you're traveling, and it's kind of a little bit off base, but when you're traveling, you want to travel with someone like a good travel person who can adapt to what happens when we can go back outside again and, enjoy that. Those are the best folks to be around. They're adaptable in that way.
That is funny. You learn a lot of adaptability, especially in work travel. It's like, the plane's delayed. We're going to be late to the meeting. What happens next?
100%. You touched a little bit about influencers, and this is a day of social and digital and the impact there. And every brand, if they're not doing it now, they're going to be doing it soon. If you're not doing it, it's like not having an email address, I feel like at this point.
Right.
What is the role of social and digital across your clients, and where do influencers fit as part of the mix? I know content creators for sure. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think social and digital is prevalent with all of our brand partners. I think it's, you can't kind of play ball, I guess it'd be like showing up to the baseball game without your glove. It's like, okay, how are you going to do that? But I think it has to be, to your point earlier, we think a lot about consumer journeys and where people are living in the digital ecosystem, if you will. And I think you have to have skin in the game across digital and social properties to play where your consumers are playing. I think a lot about, we do not work on Popeyes, but I watch them quite often. And, I study a lot of their campaigns. I think about when they kind of broke onto the scene, I've watched a lot of and read a lot of their stories, like they came up through the ranks of listening to their consumers on Black Twitter. Like that's powerful. Like there were conversations there are always going to be conversations that are happening without your brand. But the fact that you can tune in and listen and learn, but then be a part of those social places, subreddit threads, it's like, that is where some real talk is going down. I'm obsessed with Clubhouse right now. I fell asleep listening to a Clubhouse chat last night, all about these NFT artists that are breaking on under the scene and like upending the art world. So I think there is a role for how social and digital work for every single brand, and it's not cookie cutter. It has to be customized to their audiences, but I think you have to be playing there to be making an impact right now for influencers in particular. So I'm quite obsessed with the influencer sphere. I just think it's so interesting. I think back maybe like 10 years ago, what's going on to now. And so much has changed, so many more platforms to obsess over and to figure out what's going on. I'm a lurker on a lot of them. I'm a hardcore Instagrammer. I probably lurk on, and LinkedIn, I'm a big fan, but I probably lurk on the others because you have to understand what's going on, right? And so I think with influencers, I mean, most of our brand partners are there. I mean, some are maybe probably in the infancy of dabbling. Others are maybe a little bit more dedicated to doing some always on programming. But I think the desire is there. The understanding is there that these are people that can help extend the brand voice, extend the brand message, get people to actually take action. Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said about the role of influencers. And I think it's maybe similar to old days of sponsorships. Like you can get your logo, on a field or in a roundup of, people sponsoring these things. But I think with influencers, these people are dedicating their lives to their personal curated content and their feeds. And so having a little bit of a leash as a brand or an agency and working with them and letting them show you what they can do, I think is so interesting. And it takes a little bit of confidence, right? Because it's like, make sure you say this about the brand in the right way. But I think they are doing something so brilliant to innovate on the platform every day. Like I like giving them a little bit of a runway to kind of show us what they could do. And then I just think watching how the performance goes. I think the back end of the analytics of influencers and seeing what the outcomes are, like what are their fans engaging with? Are you getting clicks? Can you attach that to a sales leap on any given day, week, month, or whatever? Like that's where I think kind of nerding out on the analytics in the back end is like where the future for influencers goes, to actually see, is this person helping you sell out a product? Are they a lead generator? There's a lot of different facets of influencer world that I think when you connect it to the back end data, there's some really, really powerful things that could happen.
100%. You are speaking our language. Love being able to, because it's evolved so much. I remember I was a beauty editor, one of my first jobs out of college, and we were working with bloggers, and it was like we were giving them an opportunity to be a part of us. And then they started saying, well, this is your opportunity to now pay me. And it was such a flip. And so right. Just to see the impact that they have for these, brands of all sizes has been incredible. And then for brands to then trust them, in a lot of ways to do what they do best, I think is really impactful too. You brought up Clubhouse. I do want to touch a little bit about any new platforms that you guys have explored for your clients. Have they been open to TikTok? Have they been open to, I heard Snapchat is one of the top apps in the store right now.
Yeah. I'd say I am personally obsessed with Clubhouse. I was very fortunate. I feel like the invites have opened up. It felt yeah. It felt like, oh God, who do you know? How do I get in the beginning, which was a little, I'm like, okay, I feel like I got in early. Yeah. Shout out to Sam, my friend Sam Ewan out of New York that got me in. And now I'm like, oh, I want more people to join. I haven't done much. We're talking about it. There's a lot of curious brand partners. We haven't done much yet from a brand stance. I think, again, like I'm lurking, I'm listening, I'm understanding. I've done a panel myself thus far just to join, just to see. But I have to tell you, it is it is a connector device of some of the most interesting people in the world. I mean, I felt like I was kind of at a party last night, just moving between rooms and like live networking. I just kind of jumped between 4 or 5 different talks last night, just kind of dipping in and in, seeing who was hosting, seeing what the conversations were about. And I probably fired off like 15 different LinkedIn invites of just these most interesting people in the world. I hope they hit me back because I want to start conversations. But yeah, I mean, I think like I want to see brands play that. I don't want it to become like a huge brand takeover because I think there's such an authentic dialogue that's going on there that's not muddied by brands yet. But I do shout out to Pedigree because I saw what they did the other day with all of the dogs that they were trying to get adopted. I don't know. Go look this up if you haven't. I saw this the other day, and sometimes I see these ideas, and in my core of my gut, I'm like, "Damn! Like I wish I thought of that," you know. But it's a good idea. They made profiles for all of these different dogs that they were trying to get adopted, and it was just a really interesting use of platform. So I think when you can innovate on a platform like that with a great idea, I love that. So I do think more clients are starting to kind of play in the Clubhouse space. I think TikTok, number one, is like, we got to do more on TikTok. I think we have a ton of our brand partners that are looking to play in that space, but also to try and be smart about it and not make it the brand bandwagon moment. It does feel like Snap is making a bit, you know, maybe they were quiet for a minute, but it does feel like they're making a comeback as well. I feel like TikTok is probably like the one that is unignorable right now. That's the one that I feel like on repeat every other day we're talking about. I don't know that there's any other platforms that have come up. I mean, I know we keep seeing waves of platforms trying to enter the space. I feel like in the past 8 months, Clubhouse has probably been the one that feels the stickiest right now. That's actually like, okay, a lot of people are flocking there, and I think they're going to hang on and do some really interesting things. They just made a great marketing hire the other day, so it feels like they're on a run with that. So I'm excited to see what happens there. And then TikTok is just one that is, I mean, you can go so deep. I'm so enamored with what happens there, and I like to think about, you know, what can we do? I know we want to talk about innovation. I might skip ahead. Like, how can we innovate into the platforms, right? There's so much going on there already. We don't want to create the next new. It's how can we actually innovate into what's already happening? I mean, there's something to be said about the people like you and us. I know there's TikTok influencers, but I just think about like, there's moms and kids and brothers and sisters that are killing it on the platform, and it's just something fun for them. And I think a lot about just, you know, I guess now we're calling them the nanos, just the consumer influencer with this, that like, you can't really see my phone. I'm holding up a phone, that device in their hand, like everybody's an influencer now. Mm-hmm. You know, you can shoot a video and post it online. And if enough people start following it, like you just influence the conversation. So I think it's just, it's really interesting to see how you can crack into the power of like your average consumer and almost like ride the wave with them in making them part of your influencer sphere, not just the influencers that are making the buku bucks at this point in time.
Yeah. Shout out to Maya and Fadia, everyone who's went out there to Clubhouse. We're super excited about the platform. We've done a couple panels too. I'm gonna have to follow you and see what chats are getting in. Yeah. It is a huge research platform. It's, you know, great to definitely listen in. And to your point, it's a huge connector. And then yeah, TikTok's unavoidable at this point. I think that if you're not thinking about getting there already, you will be soon for sure. Thinking about research. So you mentioned you're a lurker, and I would argue you're a research lurker. Like,
that's right.
How valuable is that in that sense? And then even in a more technical sense, for you and your teams, are your clients really interested in, you know, maybe social listening or any sort of like analyses, maybe competitor analyses, anything like that?
Yeah, I think at the forefront of everything we do is this cultural insight and trend research. The team is wired every day to stay on the forefront of what is the talk, what do we think the predicted talk is for the rest of the week. We talk a lot about the lab at the agency being the cultural heartbeat of the agency. We are on the forefront of trying to stay on top of and be ahead of what that next insight is going to be. What do we think a trend is that could be bubbling up in some of these sub-threads, as I like to call them, that we need to wrangle and be on that early curve of conversation, right? So I think we're kind of, we live and die our success right now by research. I think it is a critical point. I know, for years we've all talked about the power of data. I think, hand in hand, the research goes in with that. And we have a lot of really impressive tools that help us stay on top of the predictive analysis, social listening, 1,000%. But I still believe, I'm not going to let robots take over, right? The human power and the intellect behind those tools is where I think we hit like a unique differentiation point, because you could have a really powerful trend in the palm of your hand, but it's what do you do with that to advance the conversation forward? Or, tying it back to influencers, who are the people that are at the forefront of that trend that you can partner with that will scale it up for you, right? Because like back to this whole NFT conversation, like you're going to do something with NFT. I do not know I am not the person. There are way too many people out there understand it. They're on the forefront of creating NFTs, or they've studied them and they're owning the dialogue there. So it's like, how do you think about, as you're researching, who are the actual people that are driving the conversation forward? And sometimes it might be particular news outlets or entities who are producing the digital news, who are taking to Twitter and social platforms to push it out in the world. But I also like to think about who are the individuals who are well studied or just super immersed in a topic that you can align with, that helps there. So yeah, I think on the research front, it's understanding what are the trends and who are the people behind those trends that are pushing the conversation forward, and really kind of zeroing in on that.
Mm-hmm. Making it more purposeful and specific. I love that. That's what I took from that. And it's also making me think about understanding what's going on in social, for sure. Understanding what's going on in culture in general. I think that you guys touch on everything. It doesn't have to just live on digital or on your phone or anything. It can be as soon as you walk outside. I want to hear more about some of the purpose-driven, maybe feel-good initiatives that you guys might have tapped into last year, or you and your clients as a whole. And do you guys have specific, maybe dedicated resources to honing in on things that are happening in our country, maybe even in our world moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, brand purpose has been an evolving conversation. I think this past year enabled many more agencies, brands, individuals to take a pause and think about what their brand purpose is and what it means. And, do they need to start over? Do they need to rethink what they're doing? Do they need to get started? I do think with how much was going on in the country, like outside of the pandemic, there was so much culturally going on in our, and there still is right now. I mean, look at the past 2 weeks alone. I think what we pride ourselves on at the Martin Agency, and I think we wouldn't be able to be good brand stewards to our partners if we didn't reach deep and do this ourselves at Martin. But we have a mission that's all about fighting invisibility. And, sometimes that might be about people not seeing our ads, but more what it's about is looking at different facets of communities and within the underbelly of culture, and understanding who are people? What are the groups? What are things that are just hidden to the world? And like, how do we prop those up and give reason for being and bring purpose to everything we're doing? So, you know, with Kristen Cavallo, our CEO, when she took the helm at Martin, that was an emphatic first step to make sure we have to ink our purpose first before we go out on behalf of others. And so we, you know, we launched the invisibility brief earlier this year, in the midst of the pandemic for, you know, it's an open brief. You can go find it on our website. And that was a big deal. You know, we look at things in broad strokes of like tension mapping, like what are the communities? What are the topics of the moment? You know, what did the COVID tension map look like in the height of everything that was going on in the summer? You know, what was preventing specific people or communities from moving themselves forward? And then I think, you know, we have a number of brand partners that have really incredible brand missions and purpose kind of inked in the DNA of their company. So a brand like DoorDash, you know, their mission is to lift up and empower communities. And so I think, you know, when we closed our office on March 13th, by March 20th, we had a brief that we needed to save the restaurants. We needed to eliminate the fear factor of people getting delivery brought to their home at the height of the early days of like, wait, everyone's confused in what's happening. And I think being able to support a community like local restaurants, you know, I feel personally passionate about it. It's like, I love going and supporting those local restaurants. I think that has been hugely, hugely powerful this past year. And I don't think it's going to go away, because it's like, we got to bring some restaurants back, you know, like a lot of them have folded their cards, and it's like, how do we re-empower them to come back to the table when we open back up again? I also think looking at moments like Black Lives Matter currently with the APITA community. I mean, we are constantly thinking about how do we talk about those conversations eloquently on, like, as an agency, but also on behalf of our brand partners. I mean, I think those were really intense but needed conversations this past year. And here's what I'd also say, you know, we needed to take a first step before we're going out and shouting purpose. There was a big educational overhaul that had to happen, you know, and we took it upon ourselves at the agency. Shout out to our talent team. They are continuing to make that part of continuing education inside the agency to ensure that, like, we are smart about what's going on, especially if we're not part of those communities. We work with people in those communities, but we have to be really, really well educated and well read, and know that we are vulnerable in some instances, that we don't know everything, and we can't push on a purpose driver if we don't first educate ourselves and get smart about the intimacy of these communities and what's going on. So I think, you know, a lot of what we've done this year with brand purpose is we've made sure that we've educated at the forefront, and I think that's been a really critical move. And then, you know, there I think a number of our brand partners, you know, we've done things with rights in the ACLU. I think it kind of all depends upon the brand, right? And where we are and what type of work that we're looking. But I do think there's a really nice red thread going across a number of our brand partners we're working with that's all about inclusivity. And I think it's a theme of the country right now. I think it's on a lot of people's minds. And so I think that would probably be a thematic that we are constantly trying to think about and evolve in anything that we do, in anything that we produce, in any, you know, hiring moment that we have, even at the agency, and any new client that we decide to take on together. Like, are we bonded with them over mission and purpose? So it's at the forefront for us for sure.
I love to hear that. And like, kudos to not only agency, you as the Martin agency, but, you know, instilling that and helping build that with the clients that you guys continue to have on deck. we love to see it. I feel like it's necessary. And if you could say it and do it, it's all the better.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this
Yeah,
is,
I think we're at a place now where you can't just say it anymore.
mhm.
And maybe previously that got you by to a certain point, but we can't. It's, the old saying we all know, actions speak louder than words. But I think if you are not taking any action, like you're falling out of you're falling out of a consumer mindset. Because I think that we as consumers now are wired to look for this. And I know we're all probably, everyone's tasked with the millennial mindset. Every day we get a brief. It's like, and we're going after the millennials again. But they're the future. And so we know that they're looking for those brands that have purpose and are standing for something, and not just standing, but doing.
1000%. I'm going to jump into some questions because they're
Let's do
flying
it.
in here. And then I'll shoot to more of my own too. Someone's asking, what are best practices and pitfalls that brands who want to be more purposeful about equity, inclusion, diversity, and accessibility need to be aware of? What are some best practices that they need to be aware of? And there's a two-part to this, but we could start with that.
Best practices. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to educate. I think educate first. I also think, point the finger back inward within the brand, and make sure if there's something you're going to take a stance on, you better believe you're living it inside your company. You want to make sure, like, if you're going to take a stance on pay equity, and I think yesterday was Women's Equal Pay Day, right? If you're going to take a stance on that, you better make sure you're living it inside. So I think looking inside your own brand and community, and making sure that you are bulletproof in a way before you go and take a stance. And then I do think, and you talked about listening earlier, part of educate, listen to your customer base about what do they care about. Because if you as a brand decide you're going to commit to something that actually maybe isn't even on the radar of your customers, you might just be shouting into the dark, and like they might, maybe they come on board with you. But I think listening, I've heard a lot about this lately. I don't remember the last talk I was listening to or what the brand was, but they were talking about this quite extensively. Listen to what they are caring about. What are they marching for? What are they passionate about? And I think that is really important as well, because you don't want to start pushing on a scenario where they're not looking at this intimately as well. Like, it's not part of what they're thinking about out in their world. So I think leaning into the community and really thinking about what they are passionate about, I would go for that. And then educate yourself, and then look within before you go forward.
Yeah, I think the look within and education and just like understanding what you're saying leads into an answer for the next question, which was like, how does that remain authentic in all of that work? I want to jump to another one. How do you envision culture changing, if at all, to support a new generation of workers who work from home? So people who work from home. How do you envision the culture changing?
The culture changing. I do think that, I mean, listen, this is a tough one to predict. I wish I had a glass ball with all of us together, but I do think, let's see, I think the culture is good. The culture is changing in a way that we had to bring that adaptability into the fold, right? And I think what I want us to be able to get back to is, how do we maintain creativity at the core? Like, it was hard to all be dispersed to our homes and try to create that creative firepower that unites a lot of us, that excites a lot of us. We talk about like the creative collisions inside the office, like bumping into someone and like fostering an idea in the middle of the hallway, right? So I think it's going to be difficult. I don't know if I have the best answer, but here's what I would say. I'm proud of many of us who have learned and adapted to find a way to keep being creative and connected from afar. I think as we go back and maybe some of us fall out of remote, I think a lot of us are going to embrace a hybrid. I feel like we're probably headed toward the hybrid scenario. I think it's just remembering on what motivated you on those early days where you're sitting isolated in your home, staring at your teammates on the screen or your brand partner clients on the screen. Like, what motivated you each of those days? And like, how do you just like reignite that fire in your belly each time? And I think it's a super conscious effort. Like, you have to be aware of the days when you felt like, yeah, my couch is over there and I feel like I could just go turn the TV on for the rest of the afternoon. So I think just as it took work for us all to go home and figure that out, I think when we go back, we have to just remember that linking arms and knowing that the whole world is doing it. Mm-hmm. You're not alone in it. It's just remembering how to spark that motivation again.
Yeah, great answer. Someone else is asking, before COVID, what were some of the big media and marketing trends you were excited about? And has that changed?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Can anyone think about what happened before COVID?
I know. It's like,
I was like, well, I feel like I got to go back into the depths of the brain on this one. Let's see. What was I
was always excited about, if I could jump in, but this is
wait, say again. What were you excited
I said about? Events in like festivals and like big,
I know
group things, but that might be too surface level.
No, but I you know what, there is, I mean, okay, let's go back to the millennial target right now. We know they favor experiences over everything. I think the lack of IRL experiences has certainly been a challenge over the year. I definitely, on the ground, face-to-face interaction, experiential events, even thinking about conferences and networking, like those physical collisions again that I talked about. I think I was excited for some of that to come to life. But in the same sense, I think if I think back, I'll put my transport back to Feb of last year, and crazy, I was doing so much travel. I was on and off planes every other week. I do think though, the evolution of these digital platforms, I think back to last year, like when TikTok, it was taking off, I think it's fair to say, but like, it really took off when people got to hunker down at home. I still think these digital social platforms where people are going to congregate online, I think any of the brand integrations that we've seen happen in the world of gaming, I still think those trends got put on steroids when we all got kind of hunkered down at home. So I was excited about those then, those different digital integrations. I think it just further impacted the way that we think about those more on the regular. Yeah. Once the pandemic hit, I'm trying to think what else it feels like such a blur. But yeah, I think the experiential components of everything, and also just figuring out how to integrate into these social platforms and not just do it because every other brand's doing it. Be really inventive about how to become a part. That's one that I think I was excited about before that has carried with us and has quite honestly become even more important.
I love that. I'm going to jump in. What does success look like for you this year?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Let's see. Success. I think, we have had at the agency, we've had a lot of great success coming out of the pandemic. We have been so fortunate that we did not let the trials and tribulations of work from home get in our way. And so I think that, what success looks like is we figured out how to maintain like the core essence of our agency, even while not being apart. So I think if and when we can come back together, I think what I will look for is, an even greater output from what we're doing with our brand partners. I also really think I'm really big on the speed to market right now. I think we're always trying to work fast. Like you're trying to be the next one that gets something out and you want to be the first, right? I think more first, breaking into more first on behalf of our brands, you know, whether it's something in beta, doing an interesting collab. I want to be ahead of the curve. I think we are always trying to rapidly respond in culture. I think if we can ink some more first, even as the agency, on behalf of our clients, that is a big deal to me, because I don't want to see us backpedal with the speed. I want to see us like wrangle the speed and get better. I don't know that we need to go any faster. But I just think maintaining what we've been able to do in quicker turns on things and getting work out into the market faster and in the hands of consumers, I think that will be kind of a champion of our success.
I love that. And I'll end it with a final question. Just what are you looking forward to? What's maybe personally, I know we're all looking forward to travel.
Yeah. Well, I just got on my first plane ride like 3 weeks ago, and I calculated I had gone 352 days without being on a plane. So I forgot what turbulence was. I was like, which is crazy because I used to be on a plane every other week. I'm looking forward to when we can go to a conference again, as nerdy as that may sound. You know, a live music concert, like, please get me in an audience just rocking along with everyone that I don't know. I'm dying for a concert. Yeah, and then, you know, I'm excited. Like, I want the Olympics to happen. I love a good Olympics year. I feel like it's a global unifier. I feel like we all deserve that this year. I'm excited. I want the Olympics to happen. Summer's my favorite Olympic season. I'm excited to see. I want those athletes to be able to compete. You know, they've been waiting too long. So that's probably more personal.
No, I love that. You gave such good insights. I know, I mean, there's more questions too, so I'm sure your LinkedIn will be full.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Hit me with all the questions on LinkedIn. I'm a super connector, so I'm trying to have my inbox fill up there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and inviting us over and being here. This would be live, you know, maybe in the future. So we're excited to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for listening.
Jaclyn, before you run, two quick things. First of all, I love your Geico Scoop There It Is commercial. I literally like do this like every time that they're on. You guys killed it with that.
Yeah. I know. I hope everyone knows the dance move. Thank you. You are one of millions that love it.
I know.
It never gets old. It doesn't get old for us.
Commercial, everything. And then the other thing, which I think is actually really interesting, I loved your enthusiasm about Clubhouse and NFTs. We are doing some really big stuff with that. My friend, actually, yesterday there was a Time Magazine NFT. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
So my friend hosted that. His name is Wolf X Lion. Jin Yu is his real name. So he's our partner in all things Clubhouse. And we are actually looking to team up with brands for NFTs. So we need to have a conversation because we're doing some really.
Let's do it. Let's have a sidebar on that for sure. We should do a Clubhouse chat. Our next chat should be a Clubhouse chat.
And I was going to say, you have to come on our next Clubhouse chat. We've been doing them about every 2 weeks. And we're going to keep doing them. And we're bringing on brand folks. So this is perfect.
I love it. See you all on